So, as some people, by which I mean all people, have aptly pointed out, I chose about the worst possible period of time to not stream. The reason for that is, of course, because we are currently experiencing what I would consider to be one of the most overt threats to the sanctity of our democracy um, in our lifetimes. At the very least, in our lifetimes, quite possibly of the past century. We are truly at a turning point. I've talked about this a little bit during my phone streams, but you know what? Let's talk about it way the fuck more. Portland. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, Portland has been protesting for about 50 straight days now, following, well, the George Floyd and BLM. And the mayor of Portland, along with the governor of Oregon, have, well, I won't say they've been perfect, but they have been more light-handed than they could have been in responding to those protests. But no more. Federal police, unmarked with no name tags, have been deployed under the banner of the Department of Homeland Security against the wishes of Portland's mayor and Oregon's governor to Portland to disperse the protests. These are secret police. These are stormtroopers. And we got to talk about it. Oh man, do we have to talk about it. Lafayette Square. Everyone remember that? I know stuff happens pretty quickly these days, but do you remember? No? Okay. During the BLM protests, there were marches being done outside the White House. It was a peaceful protest, and Donald Trump had the protest dispersed with military police, with tear gas, so that he could do a photo op of him walking through the tear gas to a local church, which he forced people out of, so he could awkwardly hold a Bible in front of a little stand, little photo op. Dispersing federal police to break up a peaceful protest is a violation of the First Amendment rights of United States citizens. We have the right to assemble, and in fact, our Bill of Rights, while some people would consider it a concession to the powers of government, is in large part an effort to secure two things: the rights for Americans to avoid persecution from the government in opposition to the government, and two, the rights of the accused. That's more or less what the Bill of Rights is about. And Lafayette Square was terrible, but it was justified at the time because Washington, D.C. is not actually a state. For that reason, the disbursement of federal police makes more sense there than it would in a stated territory, because there isn't a superseding state authority to manage any of the civil unrest taking place within those borders. No longer, as last I checked, Oregon is a state. That is what I have been led to believe. If I'm mistaken, please let me know in the YouTube comments below. And yet, federal police. Now, the legal precedent for them being there is as follows. As I understand it, the Department of Homeland Security controls a number of agencies, one of which is Border and Patrol. What is the Border and Patrol, Customs Patrol? Help me out here, folks. My memory is pretty bad. The Border and Customs and Border Patrol. Thank you very kindly. And the Customs and Border Patrol are a kind of federal police that have authority over territories that are within 100 miles of an ocean or a port of entry to the United States. Oregon is within 100 miles of the Pacific Ocean. So that, 100 miles. Yeah, 100 miles. Yeah, I know. 100 miles. I know. Portland falls within that purview, so they are there. And what have they done? Well, as you can see clearly by the way they are dressed, these are not police. To call them federal police is a little bit of a misnomer. These are soldiers. By all accounts, these are not police. By any reasonable definition, these are federal agents. These are operatives of the state, but they are not police. Portland has been fighting back against this inquisition pretty valiantly, I think. There was recently a protest done by a bunch of, what was it, moms? It was like moms marching together. They wore a bunch of yellow shirts, and they got together, and they got gassed. They got gassed. Didn't stop them. Now, on its own, videos of federal police tear gassing protesters is something that, as Americans, I think we've all kind of gotten accustomed to. We've seen the BLM protests. We've seen videos of state or, of local police officers just running up and clubbing people for no reason. We've seen people being arrested on absolutely no reasonable grounds. There is something even more terrifying that the federal agents have done, and that is kidnappings. From what we currently know, it seems that the federal agents under the Department of Homeland Security have entered Portland and have rented a bunch of vans from local private organizations. Wherever you rent vans, I don't know. And they have abducted random protesters. And I do mean random protesters. There are videos of people just being picked up off the street. Now, I want to be perfectly clear to you. This is, listen, here, as a good old-fashioned American boy, I'd like to remind you of your rights as an American citizen. When you are being arrested, you have a right to be told what you are being arrested for. Seems like a fairly reasonable right. After all, if we didn't have that right, police could just yoink you, and you would never know why. Police should be identifiable. Let me tell you, if two federal agents pick you up off the street, and they kidnap you and they put you into a van, and then they rip your clothes off and they rape you and they dump you in a dark alleyway, and neither of them had name badges on, what exactly do you do? Do you have any solutions, perhaps? Any ways? Right. You can try to cancel them on Twitter. No, you can't do shit. Police need to have their name badges visible. This is a very basic prerequisite of a functional society, a functional law-abiding society. After all, it is not just us, the citizenry, that is capable of committing crimes. Police officers and federal agents are capable of committing crimes. It is, in fact, far more likely they will in any given interaction because, as precedent has shown us, the police in America are incredibly eager to exercise the greatest possible degree of force and authority over the people they detain and arrest as possible. And that usually involves a violation of your rights in some form or another. And that is important in any such interaction to know who the fuck you are talking to. I know police hate it, and I love it. I love that they hate it. Ooh, I get so fucking hard thinking about how much they hate it. But when you start asking police for their badge number, when you start asking them to stand still so you can take a picture of their name tag, that gets them so angry. And I love it, because that's how democracy works, baby. Sorry. If you're going to be that thin blue line that protects us from lawlessness, then you better fucking believe that people on both sides of that line are going to be watching you, okay? Sorry. I'm sorry. I have read the famous Alan Moore graphic novel Watchmen. The famous line, "Who watches the Watchmen?" It's a reminder, someone must watch the Watchmen. Looks like these people don't appreciate fine literature. Um, we need our cops to be identifiable. We also need probable cause to detain people. Did you know that? Did you know that's a right that you have? Some of these people have just been swept up off the streets to be dumped into vans. And what's more, when they're pulled into those vans, do you know what's done with them? This is the scariest part. They're not arrested. Arresting would actually be preferable. Arresting would be good. Because when you're arrested, you're ID'd and you're taken to a police station, which means that there is some degree of understanding over where you are, what has happened to you, and why you are being kept there. Instead, with no record or documentation, they drive you around, occasionally holding you for long periods of time, take pictures of you, record your ID, and then dump you onto the street. Now, far be it from me to be hyperbolic in my coverage of political commentary, but that is, I don't know what step shooting political protesters in the back of the head during their sleep is, but that is the step before it. I don't know if we're at step 6, step 7. I'm not entirely sure, but the part where you, with no probable cause, abduct protesters as nameless, unidentifiable federal police, take their personal information, then dump them off. That is the step before you just start executing people, which is not good. I'm not a big fan of that, personally. Now, I think it would do a disservice to the severity of this of this incident to our democracy by focusing on individual anecdotal incidents. But I think this has gone around quite a bit. This is rather famous. This one right here. This was a Navy veteran in Portland approaching federal police. And in interviews afterwards, this United States veteran, good old boy, said that he felt these federal officers were violating their oaths, and he wanted to ask them about that. So this is a person unarmed, absolutely no confrontation or aggression with the police prior to this. No weapons drawn, no rocks thrown, just walking up to a collection of federal agents who are armed. See how they handle it. So, Officer A, just starts walloping on him with a baton. Now, thankfully, the Navy SEAL seems to be some sort of superhuman, and I can tell you, batons hurt. This guy did not seem particularly fazed by it. Oh, they broke his hand? Oh, thank you, Hyena. I didn't know that. So, okay, he is a god. He just not. They broke his hand, and then he flipped them off with both hands. One of those hands is broken, apparently. Now, again, no threat posed whatsoever to the federal agents. He just walked up, and with no probable cause, no reason, no justification, no incitement to violence, one of those federal agents broke his hand in 2 places, and the other one pepper sprayed the shit out of him. Now, in your opinion, would you call this cringe or poggers? In your personal opinion. For me, this is very cringe. Very cringe behavior on the part of the federal agents, in my humble opinion. Because, and I really don't know how many ways to say this. You can't pretend to be in favor of law and order and then be in favor of federal agents breaking the law. You You can't do that. Notice how all of these law and order types on Twitter, on YouTube, are breaking their back justifying what's happening in Portland. Have you seen it? All these people. Oh, Trump is cracking down on BLM? Heh, that's law and order, baby. We can't continue to allow this country to be ruled by you anarchist Antifa pieces of shit. And then, a complete violation of our laws on the part of these federal agents. And all of a sudden, it's justified, baby. It's worthwhile. It doesn't fucking matter what's legal or not. All that matters is that the enemy is stopped. You've got the obvious suspects like Sargon of Akkad, Paul Joseph Watson. Ben Shapiro didn't outright defend it, but he did say, well, if you think this is fascism, you should take a look at Antifa or something like that on Twitter. Yeah, real fascism is 1930s Germany. Something to that effect. Styx, Hex, and Hammer, of course, justifying it. Ian Miles Chong, to my understanding, has a FAP folder of protesters getting brutalized, and that's the only way he can get his nut off anymore. And Tim Pool has been justifying this, of course. Tim Pool, very big on law and order, this Tim Pool, very big on preventing this so-called civil war, justifying this. Wild. Very strange. You know, it's funny, just an hour and a half ago, maybe even less time than that, the protests, I think, have culminated in perhaps the most telling... You're not going to hit me with music, are you? Do I have to keep this silent? Yep, you're going to do that. Fine, I'll just mute the music. The mayor of Portland was gassed. That's him. Along with the rest of the crowd. Mayor of Portland. Wacky, right? Very gassed. I am not a gas expert, but this looks like a lot of gas. Perhaps too much gas. And, yeah. Pretty wild. Now, he wasn't just one faceless, nameless, anonymous protester there. Everyone knew that he was going to be there. The police gassed him intentionally. And that is in large part because the mayor of Portland, along with the governor of Oregon, has openly denounced Trump's federal stormtrooper imposition and has, in fact, filed a suit against the federal government to get these motherfuckers out. Hey, what happened to all the states' rights conservatives, by the way? This is the most severe violation of states' rights in my lifetime. I have never seen anything this severe in my life. Not even close. Federal agents being deployed to a city and a state where they are not wanted. Trump is planning to do this in other cities as well. Somebody just posted in chat. Chicago is going to be coming up as well. New York, I think he threatened New York as well. There are a few cities that he's threatened to. Yeah, Philadelphia, Albuquerque. There are a few cities that he... Yeah, probably Seattle, too. Or definitely next Pacific. There are probably a few more cities that he's planning on deploying these to. And as I'd love to doomer post, but let's talk about what we can make of this. Notice how most of those are left cities. Almost all large cities are left-leaning. Being in large cities corresponds positively to diversity in education and to higher IQ. They're always going to be left-leaning. Now, let's talk about how to do this properly. This is one of the greatest threats to our civil liberties that we have ever faced. And it's telling because this is the first time we've gotten a taste of what we've done to indigenous people every once in a while over the past over the past century and a half. It's funny. Now I will say this. I made a joke about this earlier. I think some people interpreted this poorly, but this is meant to be like an issue of solidarity. A president like Obama is willing to bowl over indigenous Americans, but not non-indigenous regular American citizens. A president like Trump is willing to do this to non-indigenous regular American citizens, which means President Trump, if given the opportunity, would probably be willing to deploy nuclear armaments against reservations. We in this country have a higher standard of treatment for people who we consider to be our own than we do people who we do not consider to be our own. It's why when we talk about and mourn the deaths of the Iraq War, we talk about 4,000 U.S. troops and not like 500,000 Iraqi civilians. There's a reason for that. We care more about our own. We don't consider indigenous people to be our own in this country. Lord knows how that came to be. But now we have reached a tipping point. This may seem like an admission of privilege because it is an admission of privilege. But when you are willing now to start determining who is and who is not your own on the purview of who does and does not live within majority liberal cities, we have reached a comedically terrifying point with regards to the progression of the American police state. Because now, and if you recall the speech that Trump did on the 4th of July, when he talked about how Biden is run by Antifa militants who are going to destroy the American way of life because they hate our culture, well, follow the through line. If Biden is being controlled by far-left Antifa, the people who vote for Biden are necessarily people who are enabling the agenda of Antifa, a group that Trump has said is a terrorist group. Trump is very literally willing to enact a police state to solidify the line between the Democrat and the Republican voter bases, which is extraordinary. I see the link in chat, folks. We're getting to it. This is one of the reasons why I am and always have been very critical of people on the left who suggest the Democrat and the Republican Party are the same. They are not. Let me be perfectly clear. The Democrat and the Republican Party treat foreigners the same, okay? Listen, they treat foreigners the same, all right? Okay. Domestically, and with regards to climate change, which is a global issue, so I even take back my previous concession, there is a big difference. There's something, a term I've mentioned a few times on this stream, and it's called forbearance. Y'all remember me using that term? Forbearance is the principle in a democratic society that the winners in any given election, whoever's in power at a given point in time, will not use that power to bias the results of the next election. So essentially, forbearance means, let's say the Democrats win the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and they stack the Supreme Court. Forbearance would mean that they do not then immediately use that power to remove voting booths in majority rural areas, to set up new voting booths in exclusively Democrat areas, to deliberately implement policies to increase the extent to which only Democratic bases can vote, to redistrict, to gerrymander, to what have you. Right. That's the thing. And democracy relies on that. And the Democrats, to their credit, practice forbearance because they're pussies. Democrats are very good about it. Democrats, when they are in power, remember Obama, for Obama's first 2 years, when Obama had the House and the Senate? Remember? You remember, don't you? What did he get done with that time? Exactly. If he wanted to, he could have made it so that no Republican would ever win again. Path to citizenship for illegal immigrants who have been here for a given length of time, get them on the voter registries, gerrymander districts, set up more voting booths in impoverished areas, remove them in rural areas. A Republican would have never won the presidency again. And he didn't do it. Good. That's how democracy is supposed to work. Unfortunately, it only works if everyone's playing ball. The Republicans do everything in their fucking power to defy this principle every single fucking chance they get. They will do anything and everything. They will do anything they can. Right now, the Republicans are currently trying to defund the fucking USPS so it won't be able to meaningfully track and will probably lose a bunch of the mail-in votes that will be necessary for people who believe that COVID-19 actually exists, i.e. Democrats, to participate in the electoral process. Mitch McConnell's state closed down like 95% of their voting booths prior to the primaries. You'll never guess which districts got hit worse than others. Republicans gerrymander like motherfuckers. Republicans do not practice forbearance. They don't. They're smarter than us. Unfortunately, the myth of liberal democracy is the idea that people with opposing political values can exist fairly in the same system. And it is a lie. And every day that passes, I grow increasingly convinced that a country that allows the Republican Party to exist is a country that cannot ever be truly democratic. And this is just another example of that. The federal police that have been deployed to Portland and elsewhere are part of a broader tactic on the part of Trump to destroy any chances possible of a meaningful democratic outcome. And I want to talk more about that, but it departs a little bit from the subject we were discussing currently. So I'll save that for a future segment, by which I mean I'm going to read donations and then talk about it.